Brenden Donovan, are you kidding me? What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you. It is, and I'm not even going to lie to you, the early morning hours at this point of Saturday, June 29th, 2024, as I am up past 2 a.m. as I start recording this thing. Had a lot to get to with writing an article for KMOV, so make sure you go read that. On Friday night's Cardinals win 1-0 over the Cincinnati Reds. Andre Pallante started the game for the Cardinals, did a nice job, but he really wasn't even the biggest story of the game. There were two. One was Brenden Donovan's game-ending play at the left field wall, right there in front of the Cincinnati Reds bullpen. He jumps up and makes the play on a deep drive by Stuart Fairchild. And the drama involved in this play was fantastic. Yet Fernando Cruz, the relief pitcher for the Reds, standing up in the bullpen, putting his arms in the air. First of all, if you go back and look at the replay of this, Cruz is leaned back into the bench. His arms are against the wall. He is absolutely chilling at the very beginning of this play. Go watch it. I'm serious. You'll see what I'm talking about. And then the ball is hit. Cruz gets up. He throws his arms in the air to celebrate because he thinks that his teammate Stuart Fairchild has just tied the game. And then he sort of hesitates a moment and slowly kind of puts those arms down until they're on top of his head, right there on his melon. And he realizes that Brenden Donovan has a beat on this ball. And Donovan times it up, takes a little bit of a circuitous route toward it. He sort of rounds toward this ball as he makes his way toward the warning track and then the left field wall. And that makes sense. He had enough time. The ball was hit so high in the air. He was finding his timing, basically, to prepare for a jump. Strayed a little bit further straight back than he needed to initially, so that by the time he realized, okay, the ball's coming in to the left of me, but that's perfect because he can take he described it after the game, it's a couple of steps and then a leap. When you're feeling that warning track beneath your feet, you know how to time up the steps for a potential leap at the wall. You're processing everything that's going on, but you're ignoring everything happening in the bullpen behind you. He doesn't know Fernando Cruz is making a fool of himself. He doesn't know that after he catches the ball, the bullpen catcher starts just wildly gesticulating, going crazy, spinning around, frustrated. He doesn't know any of that's going on. He's locked in on the play. He's locked in on finding a way to catch that ball. And as he said, once it hit the leather, he had to put the squeeze on it to not drop it into the bullpen. That was basically what he said. We'll play some Brenden Donovan audio. We'll play as much audio as I can. There's so much good stuff from the Cardinals clubhouse this evening. And the fact that I'm starting this recording at 2 a.m. just pisses me off because it's a day game on Saturday. I know that this is going to be dead and buried, but tell your friends to watch this YouTube video or at least listen to it because I just couldn't go to bed without making it. I thought about it. I thought, man, I am so damn tired. But this was such a fun type of game. Anytime you get a 1-0 game, you know something interesting is probably transpired to put it to that point. But it's not like this was even really a pitcher's duel. It didn't feel that way anyway. I mean, Pallante pitched well, 5 1/3 scoreless, but he came out of the game after getting into some trouble in the 6th. Ryan Fernandez continues to be, I don't know if he's an unsung hero anymore of this Cardinals team because we're starting to talk about him a lot more, as well we should. He's starting to get some more pub in the way that the questions are asked to Ollie Marmol, and Ollie says, yeah, this Ryan Fernandez guy, we're pretty fond of him. But basically the phrasing tonight was, is the big three now more like a big four? And Ollie said, absolutely. Ryan Fernandez has been a key cog in what the Cardinals are doing. Rookie Rule 5 draft pick. I mean, that guy has done an amazing job. And if you're the Red Sox, you're going, what did we do here? How do we let this guy get away? Because we didn't see this coming from him. But he is a leverage reliever in every sense of the phrase for the St. Louis Cardinals and came through, strained a couple of the inherited runners that Pallante left on there in the 6th inning, which was nice to see for Pallante because at Rickwood Field, Kittredge came in. And if you just are a box score watcher and you don't actually watch the games, you'd look at Pallante's outing at Rickwood against the Giants and go, oh boy, Pallante gave up 5 earned runs, Only 5 1/3. Boo, terrible, no good. He actually pitched pretty well. I mean, he pitched okay. I'm not going to go crazy with it, but he really deserved something more like 5 innings, 3 runs in that game. And Kittredge came in, and we know the rest. It just didn't go well there for him as he's continuing to kind of work through some things, it seems. And those runs were ultimately charged to Pallante, of course, because they were his runners. So that's where the 5 innings or 5 1/3 with 5 runs come from. But tonight, it was a different story. Fernandez comes in, he strands those runners, and now Pallante looks like a hero. 5 1/3, no runs, lowers his ERA to 4.50 for the season. And since he rejoined the Cardinals as a starter, that was like at the end of May, 3.86 the ERA for Andre Pallante in a starter's role this year for St. Louis. So, I don't know, man. That's 3.86. If you told me I could lock that in for my number 5 starter, I would say, yep, that works for me. Whether Pallante can sustain that, we'll see. But I got to ask Ollie Marmol tonight about the notion of, do you see a different version of Andre Pallante now that he's sort of, because the way I phrased it is it feels like he's kind of taken ownership a little bit of that starting role in a way that it just feels different. It looks different. It's got that vibe to it for Andre Pallante right now. And I want to make sure to spend some time talking about him before I dig in more to Donovan. And Michael Siani is actually the other storyline of the night because he scored the run that held up as the only run scored in the game by the Cardinals, or by anybody for that matter. And there's actually a pretty interesting backstory as to how that play developed and the familiarity that Michael Siani actually has with Elly De La Cruz, the shortstop on the play in question. It's not going to be a fun podcast listen if you're Elly De La Cruz or a member of his family, perhaps, because we're going to lay into him a little bit for what I consider to have been a very bad piece of fundamental baseball by the Cincinnati shortstop that allowed the Cardinals to ultimately win this game. You didn't know it at the time in the 3rd inning, but it did have a lasting impact because nobody else scored throughout the rest of the contest. But forgive the stream of consciousness version of B-Schaeff Daily tonight, because if I don't do it this way, it wasn't going to happen at all at this late hour. But let's go ahead and jump right back. I'll play you the Ollie Marmol audio on Andre Pallante. I'll play my question, too, because I'm very conceited and I like to hear my own self-talk. So I'm going to play that for you, and then we'll get into the rest of the topics for the night. But here is, well, me, and then Cardinals manager Ollie Marmol on Andre Pallante.
Do you see an extra gear, different demeanor from him now with this rotation spot that he kind of takes ownership of?
I do. I think we've seen a little bit of an evolution from being timid to actually going out there and having some presence to him. And it's a big change. I think the mentality is different. His approach has been different, and you can visibly see it. So, yeah, I would agree.
That's Cardinals manager Ollie Marmol on Andre Pallante. It just feels different to me. And this goes back to that first start that he had against the Reds when he first came back up. And he held them scoreless that time as well. And we heard from him after the game. He said, Ollie Marmol asked me when they were going to send me down. I was pitching bad in the bullpen. They were going to send me down, and Ollie Marmol said, what do you want to do? It's kind of a fork in the road moment for Andre Pallante's, not only really his season, but his career in a lot of ways. You're in the Major League bullpen to begin the year. You're not really dreaming of going back to the minors at any point this year. You've kind of made it, right? You're around. You're a guy in the mix. You don't have to worry about that anymore, getting sent down. He gets sent down, and the manager says, what do you want to do? Do you want to continue to fine-tune things in the bullpen, maybe be able to rejoin us 15 days if you can fix a few things, and who knows what the opportunities could hold, injuries, etc. Or do you want to go down there, and would you rather stretch out, work as a starter? And that was the route that Andre Pallante chose. Whether it was that simple, I don't know. I mean, you figure John Mozeliak would have to cross his desk, and he said, yeah, you can join the rotation for our highest ranking minor league affiliate. Like, yeah, that's fine. But Ollie presented that as, I think, hey, I'm going to advocate for you on this. What do you want to do? He wanted to start. He went down. He worked on developing a fastball that could be effective against righties, a two-seamer. And that was something that he mentioned again tonight that was working for him. The consistency of that pitch, I'm not sure that it's been, totally something that he's commanded well and utilized effectively with aggression, because you got to attack with that pitch. It's about going in on righties and and jamming them, doing whatever you can do to keep them uncomfortable, because he's got those reverse splits. Lefties are not effective against him, but righties historically have been. But Pallante was able to work that in tonight, and I mean the curveball's working good, but the aggression that he's got, he threw a pitch tonight at 98.6 miles per hour. I assume that is the fastest pitch of not only his season, but maybe his career. I do remember back in, I guess it was like 2022, whenever he was starting games for that spell as a rookie, he would get up there in the upper 90s on occasion. But it's been a minute since we've seen that from Pallante, and he threw one at 98.5 to Elly De La Cruz tonight. I think he did put it in play, and it was recorded for an out, but still, that's like, okay, I see you, Pallante. I see what you're working with there. That's impressive to me, man. I mean, the fact that he is getting after it like that, I don't know, man. There's something to this guy, and I continue to say, hey, John Mozeliak, ignore this for the most part. Continue to pursue and try to find a starter, because the moment you think you're safe and the moment you think you've got enough is the moment somebody's going to go down, somebody's not going to perform well enough, you're going to lose it, right? So starter still needs to be a priority, in my opinion, for the Cardinals. Nothing that happens day to day right now should change that or take John Mozeliak off the hook for that being a heavy-handed pursuit, in my opinion, over the next month. That being said, I think Pallante is safely installed right now as the number 5. As much as I did advocate to see Matthew Liberatore get another look in a starting role, I am of the belief now that that is not going to come to fruition. I was not at the Ollie Marmol media availability, whichever game this was. This might have been either Thursday pregame or one of the Wednesday pregames. Whenever it happened, I'm to understand that during that, he indicated that, no, Libby's going to be back in the bullpen. So that was, again, not something I was there for, but that's my understanding of what I was told that he indicated during that session. So, you know what? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that tonight. I do think I'd rather see, now that Libby's done it and we saw it, like, could you bottle that and sell it? Could you bottle that up and find a way 6 days later to give him a look? I don't know. It doesn't sound like the Cardinals are going to do it, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time poo-pooing it tonight, because it doesn't change the reality, and we got a lot of other stuff to talk about. So that's that. But Pallante, man, I think he's in a spot where just continue to trot him out, and the curveball looks good. The death ball has been an effective pitch for him. He's establishing this other fastball. His main fastball, he can get it up there. The sinker, obviously, is kind of his bread and butter, being a ground ball-oriented pitcher. He still had a few walks that he had to deal with tonight, but that's going to be usually a hallmark of his outings, for better or worse, and it is usually worse, but he also has the ability to erase guys on double plays. He had double play tonight. I feel like he's in a good spot, and just continue to let that ride. Every fifth day, I don't think you have to panic about Andre Pallante starting games right now. 3.86 ERA since rejoining the club, and that's been as a starter since that point. I know there have been a couple of, at least one real clunker in there. The one against Houston was bad. I'm not going to call the one against the Giants a bad start. I think he was a solid start, that things went off the rails for him in the 6th inning a little bit, and it was no different than what happened tonight, but the bullpen did its job tonight. That night, not so much, at least in terms of straining those inherited runners. It didn't happen for Pallante in that game. So I look at his body of work right now, and I say, you know what, pretty solid. And not to toot my horn, but this is kind of what I thought you were going to get from Pallante back, I don't know, a month and a half ago, when I was saying, they might have a weird number 5 starter situation brewing here, back when Zach Thompson wasn't working out, and then they tried Libby, and it wasn't really working, and they kind of did it on the fly. It didn't make a lot of sense. I said, you could do a lot worse than Andre Pallante. I just think his demeanor is different. He establishes himself into the flow of the game and the rhythm of things as a starter, because he just gets more time to sort of deal with things. And you don't want a guy that's going to allow so many base runners that he's constantly dodging traffic. 7 base runners against Pallante tonight in 5 1/3. That's a little bit heavy-handed on the whip, but not the end of the world. I get it, but I think he's done enough at this point where you do feel okay. I'm not saying you have to feel over the moon, but Andre Pallante has done a nice job, and I think certainly exceeding what most people's expectations for him would have been in this role. So that's the deal on Pallante. Ryan Helsley, since we're on pitching a little bit, I talked to Fernandez. He has been fantastic. He threw 5 outs tonight. Didn't allow anything. No hits, no walks, struck out 2. ERA is down to 2.21. JoJo came in, recorded a couple of outs, but walked a guy. Kittredge came in for the rescue, did that, got a strikeout. That was good to see him have just a clean. It was just one batter. It's all he needed in the 8th. But got his man, and then Helsley comes in. Helsley threw a couple curveballs tonight. He only threw like 6 pitches to record a quick and tidy 9th inning. A couple curveballs, and one of them for a strikeout that was gnarly. And it's interesting because right now it kind of feels like he's doing everything possible to not throw fastballs. He threw 2 tonight. One was at like 97. And then the second and final pitch that was a fastball, and it was his final pitch of the game, was 99.9. Located it was not a bad pitch. Maybe got a little too much of the plate. You might want to get the ball up a little bit more out of the hitting zone for Stuart Fairchild than he did. But threw it 99.9, and Fairchild turned it around, and that was the play where Brenden Donovan catches the ball at the wall to seal the deal for the Cardinals. And Donovan had another catch where he was just like sprinting full scale toward his right and crashed into the left field wall to save. Certainly would have been an RBI hit. I know that there was only 1 out at the time, so it may not have scored both runners that were on base for the Reds, but certainly 1 run would have scored if that ball gets down. And Cardinals only scored 1 run, so they couldn't afford any of that to happen. Alec Burleson had a play in right field that was similar in that it was clutch. Like if it doesn't happen, you're talking about a much more dangerous situation later on in this game. He makes a nice play. The defense, man, the outfield defense. Michael Siani had a play where he was, there was one in like shallow left that involved Donovan. It was a Bermuda Triangle kind of thing with the third baseman and shortstop. And then there's one for Siani that was in left center. And Siani takes charge, makes the play, and holds a runner at third at the same time, which is key when you think about the way that the Cardinals ultimately win this game. Let's talk about the Siani role offensively tonight. First of all, swinging the bat really well. It had 2 that he stung pull side. 1 went for a double. It just kept carrying, man. I thought it was going to maybe hit the track. It was over the head of the right fielder. He burned him because I think they were thinking, Michael Siani, light hitter, not really going to do much. Burned him the first time. I thought, though, base of the wall at best. And this thing banged like 6 or 8 feet up the right field wall. It was not that far from getting out of the yard. He stung it. Really sweet swing. Left side from Siani. And then the next time, the right fielder was back a little bit and hit another one pretty good. Poked it into the, not really quite the gap, more toward right field than the right center gap. But right fielder had to make his way definitely to his right and even come back on it a little bit more. But he was playing a little bit deeper, and Siani, just hit into some bad luck on that one. But he's swinging the bat well on the double, 3rd inning double. He moves over to third base on a ground out. And you didn't know it at the time, but this was the run that needed to score. How does it end up scoring is fascinating, the way that this ends up playing out. Alec Burleson, pop fly to shallow center field. Elly De La Cruz, we've seen this before, sprinting all out, great athlete, unbelievable, maybe the best throwing arm in baseball. And I know you're going to say, Mason Wynn. I know, Mason Wynn is fantastic too. I don't really think we're going to see the contest between Mason Wynn and Elly De La Cruz and O'Neal Cruz, all these NL Central shortstops that can let it eat. Probably any of them could hit triple digits on their best day. A lot of times, though, now Mason Wynn is understanding, you know what, I don't need to throw it 100 every single time I throw to Goldie. I need to keep Goldie, alive over there. Don't need to try to take his head off with these. Mason didn't start tonight. It was Brandon Crawford. But anyway, Elly De La Cruz has a ridiculous arm. We can acknowledge that. But this moment costs his team the game. Again, we didn't know it in the third, so it's not very fair to say or frame it that way. But it ended up being a very costly decision by Elly De La Cruz that I think was just the wrong choice. Stuart Fairchild, the center fielder, is coming in on this ball, charging hard. And I don't know who was calling off who. De La Cruz ended up camping underneath this thing. Not really camping, but ranging back toward the home plate and catching this ball, which allowed Michael Siani to tag from third and score. on a shortstop, a sac fly to the shortstop, wins this game for the Cardinals. That has to be Fairchild's ball. It just does. And I watched the replay a couple times to make sure I'm not talking out of the side of my mouth here, but Fairchild was going to get to that ball if he didn't want to avoid a collision with Elly De La Cruz, who is a massive human being. Fairchild could have had it. He could have been charging, moving his momentum toward home plate. Siani would have had zero chance to score at the depth that it was. The only reason he scored was because, and the reason that he knew that there was a reason to test it and try to score, was because back to the infield for Elly De La Cruz. Moving in the wrong direction, momentum taking him toward center field, toward Freese's lawn. So he's over there on third base. Pop Warner on top of it. Both Donovan and Siani went out of their way, in fact, to credit Pop Warner and his involvement being all over that. And it was interesting, too, though, because Siani knows De La Cruz. They were teammates. They did this exact play a bunch of times over the course of the time that Siani was with the Reds. Remember, he was a minor leaguer with the Reds for a long time and then came up to the big leagues for a cup of coffee before, I guess, they DFA'd him and the Cardinals picked him up off of waivers, I think, if I recall. And that's the way that happened. But he knows De La Cruz, and he knows we all know the throwing arm of Elly De La Cruz, but Siani has done this play with him and understands that it's beneficial to be the center fielder catching that ball, charging in on it, so that you're in a position to make a throw home. And De La Cruz, I don't know if he wanted to end up on SC top 10 or what it was, but he just made the wrong decision. Tried to do the flashy play when really it's getting the hell out of the way and letting Fairchild take it. All his momentum coming toward the plate. He can throw. He can look back the runner, whatever he has to do. But this was not a deep enough fly ball if a center fielder catches it to reasonably score Siani. Now, maybe they try it anyway, just because you're trying to spark something. We've seen that before from Pop Warner. But I think it was specifically because it was De La Cruz that ended up catching the ball. And there was a lot of good stuff from Michael Siani postgame. We're going to play a little bit of an extended clip of his audio. But because I had another one queued up, again, stream of consciousness, bear with me, it's 2:30 a.m. I want to at least play you the little quip from Brenden Donovan about what was going through his mind as that great catch was unfolding. So I'll play that, and then I'll find the Siani clip, and we'll let that roll for you as you get some inside the clubhouse context from Friday night.
Yeah, so I knew he hit it hard. I knew it was high, so I was just trying to get back to the wall and kind of get my footing in case I did have to jump. And, I went back and watched it. I don't know. My glove was height, like above the fence. I don't know if it was going to come down and hit the top or if it was going to come in or whether it was going to go over. But I knew it was close. And then once I felt it hit the leather, I was just like, just squeeze this thing as hard as you can so you don't dump it in the bullpen.
Did you see the Reds, in the replay, did you see the Reds bullpen coach with his arms up? And then you make the catch and his hands go down?
No, I didn't see it.
Instant drop on the excitement level there.
It's a ballpark. We talked about it before, you never know. Some fly balls will stay in this yard. So, as an outfielder, you know that as well. Unfortunately, as a hitter, too.
So there's Cardinals outfielder Brenden Donovan, utility man, really, Brenden Donovan, talking about that big play at the end of the game. And John Denton had said, bullpen coach, I'm pretty sure, and I wrote this in my article for KMOV, that it was Fernando Cruz, as I talked about, that was raising his arms, number 63. Do not believe it was the bullpen coach. If I was wrong, I will make sure to issue a correction after I've had sleep. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was out there. And it was just, it just made the drama of the play so much more compelling. And the bullpen catcher and him just kind of freaking out a little bit was, your team just lost the game. I get it. But it was happening right behind Brenden Donovan. It was just such a compelling thing. And then this Siani stuff is so compelling too. Laying out that he's got this familiarity with Elly De La Cruz. He knows that Elly De La Cruz is inclined to range into center field because he's faster than everybody else. He can cover the ground, and that's all well and good. He's also got the strong throwing arm to be able to pull off the flashy play. But this was not his play to make. But Siani, having played with him, right, because they're both with the Reds, having played with him knows that he kind of tends to do that maybe. And Siani didn't say it. I'm going to play the audio for you so you can hear. Siani was very complimentary of De La Cruz. I'm not going to be, though. I'm going to say it was a bad play that cost his team the game, whereas Siani credited, is his talent level that allows him to do that, right, to make those types of plays. But Siani knows that that's what he's going to do because he's probably seen him do it before. Now, granted, and I asked Siani this too. I'll try to play as much of the Siani stuff as he was for 5 minutes, and it was really interesting stuff. If you want to nerd out on this, on like one single play from a baseball game, this is the play that I wanted to nerd out on Friday night. So I was waiting around wait until Siani gets into this clubhouse because I'm not leaving. I want to hear what he has to say about this. And it just got more and more compelling the more that he talked. But I asked him, I'm like, you're the center fielder. Put yourself on the defensive side of this, which kind of happened at one point, not in the exact same spot on the field, but similar, where he's the guy charging and wants to be in charge of that play. So I don't know. You could go back in the archive. Were there ever times where De La Cruz actually called off Siani to make it like, okay, that's not the play. That's not what we do here. But I don't know. I do know that in this instance, Siani was ready in case De La Cruz was the one to catch the ball. And Fairchild, maybe we put a little bit of the blame on Fairchild because he needs to be assertive enough to call off Elly in that spot. But it also kind of just had the look of a play. You can go back and watch it. To me, it just kind of looked like Elly was going to do the play that might land him on a highlight reel. And so Siani's ready for it. Pop Warner at third base in his ear, ready for it. And tests him, man. Tests him and passes. It ends up going as a throwing error on Elly De La Cruz, actually, because Luke Maile did not catch the ball. Got by him, and Contreras was able to move up to second. I thought that was maybe a little bit of a tough error, though, because Contreras was likely going to get to second base regardless in that spot. But I guess because it would have been, I think, the third out, like let's say Siani would have been out at the plate. There was one out in the inning, ball's caught. That's two. If they nab Siani at the plate, that would have been three. So I guess technically Contreras wouldn't be at second base. I don't know. I think they probably could have gone without the error. Kind of funny, though, that Elly gets the error for it. Maybe they'll take it away at some point. That's his 16th of the season, by the way. So you think about, well, Mason Wynn was making a lot of errors there for a little while. Elly's made 16, and he's treated like, this walking highlight reel, which he is at times, but also, the bad comes with the good on occasion. And I think it's not even like a case of being too aggressive. I think it's just I don't know if I'd go as far as to say selfish play. That was what some of the writers were talking about. Like, it's kind of a selfish play, but if you really think about it, you can make a case that it was. Because if his goal is to end up on a highlight reel and not to just recognize that the right baseball play is his center fielder, if he's able to get to the ball, which I genuinely believe that Fairchild would have been able to do so, he has to slow up a little bit toward the end because he's going to run into De La Cruz if he doesn't. But I just think that's the situation as it played out, and it is a bad play. No doubt about it. But I think you guys really will get a kick out of hearing Michael Siani walk through it. So, and I'm not sure where else you might have the chance to hear this. So if you've heard it elsewhere, great. But if not, I'm just going to play through a lot of what Michael Siani had to say, talking about that play and just kind of how he's feeling at the plate as well defensively. There's a lot of interesting angles to this. So Michael Siani from the Cardinals press box post-game after the Friday 1-0 win over the Reds.
The play that you scored on, like the communication from Pop, how you track the ball off the bat, and kind of what's the go, no-go when you make that decision there?
Yeah, as soon as the ball goes up, as long as it's not, like, clearly in the infield, you're going right back to the bag regardless. Yeah. And then, he was right next to me the whole time in my ear, so as soon as I see, I know how, I played with Elly. I know how far out he can get. I know how far he'll run into center field and how talented he is in doing that. So I see him take off, and I know, he's going to go after the ball and pops in my ear the whole time, just checking him. And, his back's turned to me when he catches it, and I know he's probably pretty far out there. So in that spot, take a chance to go. And, he's got to make a perfect throw to get me out. So, play aggressive.
As somebody who has played center with him playing short, have you had similar spots on the field with him like that? And is it just a matter of you called him off or you didn't? I mean, I don't know.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've had that play happen with him
Sure.
a bunch of times where I'm in center and he's in short, and like I said, I know how far out he can get, and I know how, aggressive he can be, and that's a great thing, and it's, I mean, that's why he's so talented. But, on that play, I as soon as I see him, have his back towards me, and and he's so far out there, it's just kind of the reaction and pops in my ear telling me go, but
Yeah.
he's on. I'm on go there, and go until I stop. So, it's kind of the read.
Have you seen him make that play and throw the guy out?
Usually they don't run, but he was pretty far out there. So, so I mean, he was, he made a good run for it, and it wasn't like one of those infield pop-ups where he's kind of like just kind of camped under it. He was never really had the ability to camp under and get behind it. So, as he continued to keep moving out further and further, and catch it over his shoulder. I mean, I know he has the arm strength to get it home, but like I said, in that spot, he's got to make a perfect throw right to the catcher, and have a clean tag. I mean, I'm sliding there too. You can never know what's going to happen. Right. So, it's just taking a chance, and Pop was in my ear the whole time. So,
and defensively, you have a play that's somewhat similar where you're taking charge in the center. As the center fielder, that's always going to be your preference, to be able to have your momentum moving toward home plate and prioritize being the one to catch that ball, I guess.
Yeah, in that situation, I want to come in and have my momentum going forward and catch it. Have my direction going to the plate, similar situation. I mean, I think I was a little more over towards left field maybe, but I want to be as vocal as I can and come in and take charge in that spot. Me or Donnie, depending on how close it is to him. But yeah, same idea. Like, you want to try to get the momentum going forward, and I was able to get there relatively early enough to call off Craw and try to be as loud as I could and get my momentum going that way.
Donnie kind of talked about those are the types of plays, those exact scenarios are what you're working on like day one of spring training. It's one of the first things you'll work on, and just can you speak to those little details and how they tend to manifest during the season?
You see how it makes a difference in a lot of games, right? I mean, base running, communication in the outfield, little stuff like that. So, it is something we work on very early in camp and throughout spring training, and just being on the same page with your outfielders, knowing your guys. I mean, knowing I got Burley next to me, Donnie next to me, DC's out there, Newt, whoever it is, right? So just knowing who I got with me, and same thing with the infield too. Like, those plays are going to happen where you got to come in and you're going to have that triangle where somebody's got to come in and call it off, or you let the infielder take it. So it's something we work a lot on. And in that situation, it's first and third, so you got to be able to take charge and make sure you're behind the ball and have that direction going towards the plate.
It's just so interesting to me, and Michael Siani was great. We appreciated his time post game. It's so interesting to me how, like, we say the narrative-y type of stuff all the time about doing the little things and how much it matters, but like, how many times this year have we legitimately seen these games, as the Cardinals continue to play so many close games, come down to the little things and fundamentals and the kind of stuff that you do work on day one of spring training? Brenden Donovan, in addition to making sure like he stopped and shouted out Pop Warner for the job that he did on that Siani play, because everybody saw the way that was handled, he said, this is the kind of stuff that we are drilling right out of the gate in spring training. And the fact that you're seeing it make a difference, and look, you can make the case that it's not to say that the Reds aren't working on these things, but I would argue their shortstop in a similar scenario made a mistake on a play that cost his team a run, whereas the Cardinals, when they had a spot sort of in that Bermuda Triangle area, Donovan's converging, Crawford's kind of in the area, who's going to want it, who's going to take it, it's first and third. Siani takes it because he's the one that, if it's closer to Donovan, as Siani said there, then he can be the one to take it and he can be in a position to make that throw home. But one of the outfielders is ideally going to get to that ball to avoid Crawford with his back turned having to be the one to make a play. Or even if it's Mason Wynn at shortstop that day. That's not going to be the ideal scenario to make sure you cut down a run at the plate or prevent that guy from even going in the first place. So those are the things that I think we continue to see time and time again, these things crop up. For the Cardinals, it's the delayed steal the other day that also involved Brenden Donovan. You talk about a fundamental baseball player. But that was a play that the Cardinals ended up winning that game by 1 run. And if that run doesn't score, who knows how who knows how the rest of that game plays out. These little fundamental things that for a while, like errors were being made and it didn't seem crisp. And then I don't know when it changed, mid-May or so, the Cardinals started to play a better brand of baseball again. And they've been pretty consistently locked in on the fundies since then. It's not every day that they're going to have a great offensive day. Look, Frankie Montas shut him down. Bullpen, they scored 1 run. They scored on a sac fly to the shortstop, and that's it. So we're not praising everything about this team right now. There are still going to be some concerns about the offense. But hitting is not, in some ways, hitting can be fundamental if you're doing the little things, moving runners over, putting the ball in play in certain circumstances where that is demanded of you. But largely, I'm not really talking about are they slugging when I'm saying they're doing the little things right. They're doing the other things that shouldn't ever slump. It's because it's related to preparation and related to just playing the game the right way. That's the kind of stuff that I think Cardinals fans appreciate. So let me know in the comments below if you think I'm on the right path with this one. I'm just so impressed by the way. And like Siani's that kind of player. I continue, and I've done this already where I said mea culpa. There was a point in time where I thought, how much value does this Michael Siani guy really have to the 40-man? And I just could not have been more wrong, and he continues to impress me more and more. I'm not like re-apologizing for that because I already have done this before, but he is the type of player that embodies a lot of these aspects. And Brenden Donovan is as well. So here's the question I asked to Donovan. I alluded to it already a little bit, but I'll let you hear the answer as well. Basically the same question I asked Siani, because for Donovan, you can get that perspective from both an infielder and an outfielder's perspective because he's played both. And so he's going to be aware of all of it. It was just basically me trying to go, is anybody going to throw Elly De La Cruz under the bus? No. So can I ask these questions in a way that's like, we're all on the same page here, right? In that situation, not talking about Elly, but in any given situation, generally, the outfielder is going to be the one that wants to take that, right? And so that's kind of the angle that I was playing post-game. And the funniest part of it with Siani was Jeff asking him, do you remember anybody actually scoring on that against De La Cruz? Does it normally go that way? He said, well, usually they don't run, which is just so cheeky because, well, he's the guy that ran on him and he scored. So fun. But here's my question to Donovan, and then I'll talk about a few other things that I wanted to note from this game and from the Cardinals minor league system on Friday night.
Defensively to that same play, like y'all kind of had one that was similar where Siani kind of took charge and made sure. Is that one that you'd really rather have the outfielder catch? Is that something you guys work on as middle infielders to know, in a perfect world, you make sure you make the catch, but if you have your druthers, you probably want the outfielder catching it, I guess, if it makes sense how I'm asking that.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, obviously the momentum for the outfield's working in, and it stems back to spring training. It gets a little old, but you drill it. It's fly ball, pop-up priority. It's like one of the first things you do in spring training. You're like, why are we doing this? Well, it matters, And I think that's one thing we really focus on this spring training is we're gonna do the little things right, and these little things are gonna help us win games along the stretch. And as soon as the ball was off the bat, Siani and I were hauling in, and I knew he had the angle, he had the momentum, and he was calling it early. So all I'm doing is I'm just getting out of the way, letting him do his thing.
Like, that's Cardinal baseball, guys. That's what it's supposed to be. And you've got a number of guys that are in the mix right now that I do think embody those things. So I was very impressed by both Donovan and Siani tonight, not only in the game, but with the way that they explained things after the fact. Was pretty insightful. So I thought that was cool. But that's all the audio I have for tonight. But I jotted some things down during the game. And this is something that if I were more organized, I would do a better job of doing this. But just a few other things that I wanted to mention. I just thought it was funny, just like a notable moment of Pallante when he had allowed a couple of base runners in the sixth. He was, I don't remember if the second one was a walk, and he was turned around facing, just like Elly De La Cruz, he was facing the center field wall, basically. And the infielders started to kind of converge on him to where that there's somebody coming out of the dugout. But he waited like multiple seconds before turning around to see if it was going to be Ollie or if it was going to just be Dusty Blake. And it was Dusty, which meant that Pallante at least had one more batter, and that was Noelvi Marte, I believe, and he got him out, but that was his last guy. I just thought it was notable. One of those things, like, if something strikes me, I want to start just mentioning it. I should name the segment and have something, pithy to name it, but just kind of throwing some stuff in there. If that's the kind of thing you're interested in, just remembering some random moments from the game. Sometimes when you're at the ballpark too, you'll see things that they maybe won't even see on TV. I don't know if that was displayed or if I'm reading too much into it, but I thought, man, Pallante is really just waiting. He knows that there's a mound visit coming. He just hasn't turned around, and he slowly turned around to see who was there. I thought it was kind of funny. Just thought it was notable. Another aspect I wanted to talk about regarding Michael Siani, who's going to be the center fielder for the Cardinals long term? We know Nootbaar's on his way back. We know Edman is eventually supposed to be back. And Jeff Jones, I was talking to Jeff Jones about it during the game, sitting next to him in the press box. And he said basically exactly what I was thinking. Get the OPS to start with a 6. If you can get Michael Siani's OPS to start with a 6 instead of a 5, I think that might be all it takes for the Cardinals to feel pretty fine about him as the primary center fielder. Not every day, but primary, more than half the time. I think he could play that frequently. And again, tonight he really did look good swinging the bat. Hit a double, ended up scoring on that, had another swing that was a line out, fly out, whatever you want to call it, to right center. Took some good ABs. He's really swinging the bat well. We know how good he is defensively. Siani could be a long-term fixture for the Cardinals if he just does a little bit more with the bat. And maybe that'll come around, maybe it won't. But I really do think he's on the cusp of something if he can figure it out at the plate a little bit more consistently. So I wanted to mention that. And also wanted to mention the pickoff of Elly De La Cruz. I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second here, and then I want to talk about a couple of the standout performances from the minor leagues tonight in the Cardinal organization. Elly De La Cruz was picked off by Wilson Contreras at first base. I don't remember the inning, but if you watch the game, you know what I'm talking about. It was a weird, just an extremely weird trip for Elly De La Cruz because it was against JoJo, so it must have been the 8th inning. I'm remembering it now. He is leaning off first base and then dives back in when JoJo actually throws a pitch. So I don't know if he thought because the lefty, he misread what the timing, the step was going to be, thought he was going to throw over. Actually, jerked back to first base instead of taking a secondary lead, which was funny. And then he was doing the opposite of it after a pitch. He took a big lead, practically fell down. Contreras had him dead to rights. Goldie, initially, they said he tagged him out. Was a nice moment. Reds are screwed. Big play because we know he's a threat on the bases. He could steal second. He could steal third. But then they review it. And it takes forever. I mean, forever. I don't remember a replay review lasting this long. But ultimately, they overturn it and say that Elly is safe. And then he does later steal second base. I just considered this, though, to be a prime example of taking the replay review rules and ignoring them, which I don't think the rules are good as they stand, but the rules are the rules, so you should enforce them consistently. Here's what I mean by this. Normally, it's got to be conclusive, indisputable video evidence, blah, 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 the way that they phrase it, in order to overturn a call in the field. But how many times do we see one of these play out where we're 60% or maybe 75, 80% sure the call in the field was wrong, but we know that because it's got to be conclusive, they are not going to change the call. You can sit there watching the 2 minutes that they're showing these replays and going, all right, I see what this is. In the universal truth, that guy's out, right? But because they called him safe on the field, they're going to stick with it because they're only 70%. They don't have the angle maybe to definitively show, and so they're not going to change the call. This one, though, felt like I was 85 to 93% sure that Goldie missed him on the replay, missed the tag. But I just won't believe you if you tell me that they conclusively determined that Goldie did not tag a dreadlock, a piece of hair from Elly De La Cruz. Because I think it was literally that close. You could not. Maybe they had a camera angle that I didn't. That's the only thing that I could consider as plausible, that they didn't show in the stadium what they were showing in the replay room in New York. And they said, no, he didn't tag his hair. But hair is part of the uniform, which is part of the body. And I thought there's just no way to definitively tell that he didn't. But because it's not like a 75%er, it was like a 90 to 95%er, that no, I don't really think he got him. But that's not supposed to be the way this works. You're not supposed to be able to overturn it unless it's definitive and conclusive. And I do not believe that this was, but I believe that because they said, we pretty much know that it was very unlikely that he got the tag down. Initially we thought he did. We slowed it down. I think he missed him. But I just don't think there's any way they could have seen that definitively he didn't tag a piece of hair that was flying off the side of Elly De La Cruz. So that's just me. I had to soapbox it about the replay stuff because I think the best way to do it would be actually for Elly to have been safe there. What they should do, though, they have to change the rules to allow for it. That's why I have a problem with what they did. They should change the rules. The NFL screwed everybody on this years ago because they were the first league to really start with replay, and they did this, got to be conclusive, indisputable video evidence to overturn the call on the field. If it's not, it's a stands instead of a confirmed, right? But this one, I just had the gut feeling, I'm like, they're not going to say this stands. They're going to overturn it, but I know in my soul they didn't have again, maybe not in my soul, because they might have had a camera angle I didn't have. But it seems unlikely to me that they had the ability to enhance, and see that he didn't touch with the glove the hair. Because there was a strand of hair that I think he might have gotten the hair. What should happen is they should be able to make their best judgment off of looking at the replay. If you're going to bother to send it to replay, replay is not to get the call correct. It's not. Not with the way the rules are functioned. Replay is to overturn the ones that are obviously missed calls. That's why it's there. For the calls that are in between, if it was to get the call right, they would look at the video and go, we're going to make our best judgment on this based on what we see, and then we're going to go tell you what it is. But they don't do it that way. They adhere to the call on the field, except for when they don't, because tonight I think they didn't, even though I do not believe they definitively knew that the tag was missed. But that's just my soapbox. Here's a couple of things I want to talk about, and then I'm going to get out of here and go to bed. Memphis Redbirds, Jordan Walker, bang. Luken Baker, bang. Luken Baker's 22nd homer of the season. Good to see from Jordan Walker. But for Luken Baker, I think you got to get him up. I just don't know how you do it. It's Matt Carpenter's spot. And Matt Carpenter is giving wisdom to guys like Alec Burleson, so you're not gonna nuke Carp off the roster. His presence, I do think it carries value. As much as we were snarky about it in the offseason, he's bringing things to the table. Guys like Lance Lynn are bringing things to the table behind the scenes that are mattering tangibly on the field. So they're not gonna have a spot for Luken Baker is the shame of it. And I get it. There's going to be 10 million comments. Not that many. People don't listen to this show like that. But there are going to be comments that say, well, just trade Goldie, right? Trade him for a reliever. He's expiring anyway, and bring up Luken Baker to play first base. I get it. They're never in a million years going to do that. And I'm not even advocating that they should. The veteran part of it, it's Paul Goldschmidt part of it, and he is probably, if you're telling me Paul Goldschmidt and Luken Baker are both going to get the chance to play every day the rest of the season for their respective teams. Let's say Luken gets traded, whatever. Who am I taking for the OPS? I'm probably still taking Goldie, right? I'm not so far out on Goldie that I'm like, oh, just trade him because you can upgrade the position from the guy that's at the minors. That being said, Luken Baker's got 22 home runs and it's not even July. So, guy needs to be in the big leagues to just see what it looks like. Needs to be DHing for. If he's not going to play for the Cardinals, trade him for a reliever because he might have enough value at this point with the homers that he's hitting that you could probably get a reliever for him that could be useful. And then he gets the opportunity to actually start playing big league baseball, which I think he deserves at this point. He's spent enough time in AAA hitting nukes. He's set the Memphis home run record. Took it from Nick Stavinoa, which is another guy that it's kind of like, okay, maybe this is a go to Japan kind of guy eventually if you're Luken Baker. Make some money over there. Hit some bombs. But I also think he maybe deserves a chance in the big leagues first. I don't know how it happens. Just throwing that out there. Zach Thompson walked 6 tonight. He was kind of banged up for a little bit. I don't know the injury, but I think he was a little bit injured because he went 10, 12, whatever days it was, not pitching. He walked 6. and only pitched 3 innings tonight. So still dealing with some command stuff. Had been really pitching well prior to that. I think might have been like June 12th-ish. That was his last outing. So I think he was out for a little bit. But tonight he was not sharp. So that's unfortunate. And down in Springfield, Mike Antico hit a homer, multi-hit game, scored 3 runs. Cardinal outfielder. I'm just going to try to throw some little tidbits in so you guys know what's going on down on the farm from time to time. Let me know if you think that's a good idea, bad idea, sucks, whatever. All right, I'm going to be done. I think I'm going to be done. It's past 3 o'clock. I'm delirious. We've done this for 50 minutes. I think this was good. Hopefully you guys got something out of it. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoy Cardinals content. I do it every day, even if it's the middle of the night. And you can check out the channel memberships here on YouTube if you are so inclined to support the channel in that way. B-Schaeff Daily also can be found on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe or follow over there. Find the link in the description for the channel memberships right here on YouTube. That is going to do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate you guys as always. We'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.